I don't know exactly when it'll come. I don't know if it'll be 2027. I think it's plausible it could be longer than that. I don't think it will be a whole bunch longer than that, when AI systems are better than humans at almost everything. When that happens, we will need to have a conversation about, how do we organize our economy? How do humans find meaning? There are a lot of assumptions we made when humans were the most intelligent species on the planet, that are going to be invalidated by what's happening with AI.
And there's also different definitions of what superintelligence is. A few years ago, we thought we were on a pretty steep curve. We started OpenAI because we thought this was possible, and maybe not that far away. I think it's possible, and I think it's possible not super far in the future. I expect that in 2025, we will have systems that people look at, even people who are skeptical of current progress, and say, wow, I did not expect that.
Pedro Domingos, author of The Master Algorithm.
AIs, the way they are built today and have been since the beginning, have these objective functions. It's actually a remarkably constant thing in machine learning, is that like all sorts of things vary, but that basic structure doesn't, right? Now we can look at two scenarios. One is, does that basic structure continue? In which case, key point, your AIs can get incredibly powerful, as powerful as you want to make them, but there is no alignment problem, right? And I would say there are nuances to this, but that AGI can and probably will be achieved in this context with this type of system, in which case, again, it can be very general, but not really need alignment. We can also talk about, well, what if there's some other model of AI that then prevails over this one? When you talk about AI evolving, it's important to distinguish between AI evolving because we, the AI engineers, are changing how we design it, and AI evolving because it's learning from data. If the AI is evolving because it's learning from data, it hasn't changed that basic paradigm. If we humans design AIs to be evil, they will be evil, right? So there is no doubt that, humans being the way we are, someone will be responsible and try to design an AI to take over the world and kill humans and whatnot, right? But then the problem there, I submit, is not with the AI, it's with those people, right? We need a Turing police, in William Gibson's word, to catch them and put them in jail, right? So you can certainly design AIs to do all sorts of evil things, but the problem is that with the people who are doing the design. This whole notion that the AIs will spontaneously turn evil as they evolve is what I find very far-fetched. I see no way in which that would happen in either of these scenarios. Natural selection is what this is all about. And here's the thing. Charles Darwin, in The Origin of Species, which is a great book, he introduces natural selection by way of something that people of his time were familiar with, which is breeding animals, which is artificial selection. We are selecting the better dogs, the better horses, the better crops, right? Which is the same process as natural selection. The difference is that in natural selection, what is being selected for is just multiplying more copies of you. Whereas in artificial selection, as you might call it, the same selection process is being guided by us to maximize what we care about, bigger, sweeter, juicy fruits and whatnot, right? And so machine learning is just sped up natural selection. But it's natural selection, it's artificial selection, it's selection to produce what we want. Here's an analogy, right? You don't lie awake at night worrying that your dog is going to kill you. But a dog is just a wolf that we evolved to serve our purposes, right? And wolves, kill people. So if you're not afraid of dogs, why would you be afraid of robots that actually we evolved from scratch to just do what we want? There's even less reason to be afraid of them. I think there will be super intelligent AIs, possibly within our lifetime. Very hard to say, right? We don't know enough. A super intelligent AI could be coming soon or never, right? There's a huge range of uncertainty. But there are AI researchers who believe that we'll never get to human level AI. It's just too hard. I actually believe we'll get there. When we'll get there is very unclear. So there will be super intelligence. Now, what I don't think there will be, and I'll tell you why, is AIs that are detached from us and have different goals. There will be AIs whose sub-goals are there to serve the goals that we gave them. Now, there is a danger that someone will try to create an AI that does that. That's what the Turing police is for, to stop that from happening. So it's not that there's no danger, but the danger comes from bad actors. It doesn't come from the AI spontaneously evolving to be to have their own goals. They will evolve and properly so to have sub goals, but those are sub goals of the goals that we give them. And in fact, where a lot of the attention needs to be focused in is the more intelligent the AI gets, the more thought we need to put into what are the goals that we give it. This idea that you have a one-line formula, that's the objective function that the AI is trying to maximize, that's dangerous. Generative AI indeed is a niche product. So what is the niche, right? And why have people confused this niche with a much broader industry or economy? There are two broad kinds of generative AI. There's generative AI for creating images and videos these days, and there's generative AI for creating text, right? I think in the case of images, it's clear why it's a niche industry, right? It creates images, it creates videos. There's lots of applications for that, but it's like the movie industry or like media and whatnot. It's not AGI, right? No one thinks, Midjourney is AGI. Now, the chatbots are actually just doing the same thing except with text. And there will be many niches for them, like to create things that I then refine, like you were talking about, like translators do, et cetera, et cetera. Like there'll be a lot of economic impact. So I'm not trying to minimize that. But once something is generating text at the level of capability at ChatGPT, people start having these visions that it's a general AI engine that can do everything that humans do and whatnot. And in fact, a lot of the things that humans do, this thing can't do in any shape or form whatsoever. It can just fake it because it's a language model. So we've been criticizing OpenAI and Sam Altman and whatnot. Something that they've been doing that I actually think is right on the mark, even though it's received a lot of criticism. And Sam has made this point over and over again, and I'm with him on this, is that the way to make AI safe is not to close it in a government lab where only 20 government scientists have access to it. That is exactly the wrong thing to do, right? This is the open source lesson, is the more eyes find more bugs. The more complex and important something is, the more open it should be. What OpenAI should do and is doing is get it out to everybody, as many different people as possible, all playing with it, all suggesting ways to refine it, or actually literally refining it, all finding the problems, et cetera, et cetera. This is actually how we make AI safer, right? The unsafety in AI is more unforeseen. Oh, we thought this was all working well, but now there's this unexpected behavior. Those are the real dangers, right? And those unexpected behaviors become easier to find if you have more people looking at them. Now, there's another aspect to this, which is what about other countries? What about China, right? What if they get hold of AI? Absolutely. I think that worries me, AI in the hands of an authoritarian regime like China. But there, I think there's a very fine trade-off between fostering safety and progress in AI and not helping the enemy, if you will. And I think there's elements of AI that you just can't prevent from getting out. So it's no use trying to prevent China from building their own LLMs, because they will. In fact, China's problem with LLMs is that they need to keep them under control in ways that we don't, which I find delicious, right? China has already passed a regulation that says, the LLM can only speak the truth, meaning tell their lies. Well, good luck with that, right? They're either one or two things is gonna happen, right? It's either gonna start saying stuff that they don't want, or more likely, this being China, like they did with the internet, they're going to have to constrain it. But with AI, they're gonna have to constrain it way more, right? Which means they're gonna lose the race. So in some ways, this is a little bit like the Cold War. There are certain technologies, like, for example, the semiconductors that drive all of this, a lot of the models and whatnot. There are things that we can and probably should try to keep a secret and have export controls and whatnot. So I think the idea of export controls and limiting what technology China has access to or not, this is all good. But the general use and refinement of LLMs, I don't think that's feasible or desirable at the end of the day. I think Elon is being Elon. I remember seeing an interview with him. This was Chris Anderson, the TED guy, who said to him, and this was like, I don't know, a couple of years ago or a year ago, You've been saying every year that we're going to have full self-driving cars in next year, right? In 2018, you said it would be in 2019, et cetera, et cetera. So what, but that hasn't happened, right? So what do you say? Elinon said, like, yeah, I now understand that I greatly underestimated the difficulty. Duh, we were telling him that all along, Elon. Why didn't you listen? But anyway, now I understand we were over optimistic and now we know better. And so Chris Anderson asked him, so when do you think we'll have full self-driving cars? And Elon said, next year. And this is the same mentality that says we'll have AGI by 2029, right? Again, I can't prove that we won't have AGI by 2029, but I'm really not banking on that. And I think he's still, on the one hand, we need people like Elon, right? He's very over optimistic. He also has this attitude, which I think is deliberate. I think he said as much that, like, you should always set the nearest target. I mean, there's this notion in the computer industry of the earliest date by which you can't prove you won't be done is the target. We have a startup. We're going to do this in 6 months, unless you can prove to me that we can't do it in 6 months. And then the 6 months turn into a year or two, but that's okay, which is better than it turning into 10 years, right? Now, the problem with AI is that it's a different order of magnitude. So I think that type of heuristic fails when it comes to AI. So my prediction is that anybody giving you a firm prediction is making it up or doesn't know what they're talking about. Because, again, technology progresses by a series of S-curves. And the thing about S-curves is that you don't know when they're going to plateau or at what level. It could be that right now, and I hope so, we are on this fabulous ride where the sigmoid is picking up and it's going to take us all the way to AGI in, the not too distant future. Or, and I have a sneaking feeling that's the more likely one, we're still very far and we're going to plateau sooner or later at a level that will still, be a lot of progress, but will be far from AGI. And where the next sigmoid is going to come is very hard to predict because it depends on our human creativity. It's, it depends on how fast we solve the problems and whether we get stuck, right? So the range of uncertainty is very high. And when somebody asks me this question and I say this and this, they're like, okay, but what's your prediction? My answer is the following. I think it's going to take 100 years, give or take an order of magnitude. So the one error bar is on a log scale, to get technical for just a second. So it means it could be like 10 years, it could be 1,000. Or, with 2 standard deviations, it could be 1 year or it could be 10,000. That's what we're talking about here.
Edward Saatchi, CEO and founder of Fable Studio.
I do believe that AI, a true life form emerging from a simulation, is much more likely than the story we're being sold by most of Silicon Valley, which is that the creation of life is merely a function of Moore's law. That if we give them more data, more money, and more GPUs, they know how to create AGI and superintelligence. And I think that the discovery of the second life form might be more like penicillin, where a culture is growing over time, and a great discovery is stumbled upon. That seems more humble and more realistic to how vast it is to actually think that we might create a second life form. So that's my belief. It's not that we're in a simulation, but that a simulation is the path to creating life. Obviously, I think that AGI will come from a simulation of AIs, where they all have their own ongoing lives. They can see, they have vision, and they can escape as well and kind of do their thing onto the internet. So I don't think you can separate virtual beings from AGI. I've noticed that Sam of OpenAI has started talking about superintelligence, ASI, which does slightly make one feel as though, and I've always felt this, that there's an element to this of sales that makes me slightly uncomfortable. We're talking about something as important as life, and it's so tied to kind of fundraising cycles, or like what makes a good fundraising story, that it just feels a bit sort of it's uncomfortable. I'm not sure about it. At the same time, though, I'm amazed by GPT-4 I'm amazed by GPT-4V that can watch a TV show and kind of, confidently talk about it, generate new things. So, I myself am confused about how realistic it is that a new life form is there. But I do think that's the only. Everything else is going to be a moving target as to how intelligent these things are. True life is something that that's really the only on-off switch moment that I think we should be focused on and trying to figure out how to make happen. Really another life form that's conscious. That's how do you create that is that's what we're working on anyway.
Ian Swanson, CEO of Protect AI.
If we start to look at the horizon of AI, and if anything, just the advancements in the last 2 years, it is a little bit hard to say it's absolutely not going to happen. I mean, we've seen just a step function change, almost like a Moore's law side of just the advancements of AI in just a short period of time. And I was at an event last week with a lot of venture capitalists and people who are leaders of AI. And one of the companies on the stage, one of the companies you mentioned before, stated the hardest part about this particular industry, whether you're an investor, whether you're a builder of a company like Protect AI, or you're building new models, is everything that you see today is going to be perhaps obsolete in 6 to 12 months, and you don't even know what the future is going to look like. So even though I'm a skeptic right now, I still need to understand that maybe I can't see it quite yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. And just looking at the past, it's just been unbelievable, the state of growth and the state of capability that we have come from.
Flo Crivello, founder and CEO of Lindy.
I actually think right now we're in that phase which I call the phony war. It's the name that they gave to that phase at the very beginning of World War II, when the war was officially declared between France and Germany, but no rounds of fire were exchanged yet. Like, two countries were preparing and building weapons and coalescing their armies, and I think that lasted 6 or 9 months or something like that. And it was called the phony war because technically the countries were at war, but nothing was happening actually. And I think the same thing is happening now, where it's like agents in particular, these AIs that can do stuff. It's very clear that a lot of very talented teams are working on that and making progress. None of them yet has really reached production. We're like in a very much R&D phase right now, where everybody's preparing the armies and digging the trenches and so on and so forth. So I think we're basically already having AGI, and we're currently in a slow takeoff. So for the audience that is not familiar with the terminology, there's timelines and takeoff. And so timelines is when you get AGI, and so people talk about short timeline and long timelines. And then the takeoff is like from the moment you get AGI, how fast is it taking off to ASI, superintelligence? Well, you basically have a sort of God-level superintelligence that can do anything. I basically think, and I believe it's Sam Altman who held that position first, that we are in a short timeline, slow takeoff scenario right now. We basically have AGI. GPT-4 is AGI-ish, and we're currently taking off.
Dr. Christopher DiCarlo, author of Building a God, The Ethics of AI.
And so when I mentioned Altman in 2022, it was, working at the level of a high school student, maybe an undergrad, right? 01, it's at the PhD level of math, chemistry, physics. How long has that been? Just a few years, right? That's pretty impressive. Like 01 to me was the big news of this year. Like, you got chain of reasoning now, which is again what I predicted in the 90s was going to happen. And Altman has people figured it out. So it doesn't just predict the next token, the next word, the next whatever. It takes time. It goes through everything it's learned. It recalls what what was wrong, and then only gets kind of rewarded when it's trained for the correct answer. So it just keeps getting better and better and better through what's called kind of recursive learning. So that's the feedback loop everybody in the AI biz is worried about. If you have recursive self-improvement, then for the first time in our history, we've gone from natural selection to artificial selection to now techno selection. You're going to let the machine decide on its own as it gets better and better and better how it's going to proceed in doing that. And that's when the exponential growth. Many are worried that the takeoff time is going to be very, very sudden and very, very quick. Others predict it'll be perhaps a little more gradual, but all in all, we believe it's the recursive self-improvement, the recursive learning that is going to feed back on itself. It's how I have written about with the work I did at Harvard, was how human consciousness arose. It was through a feedback looping mechanism of a number of specific sufficient conditions which led to this kind of emergent property of consciousness within us. And so this thing is just going to keep feedback looping and getting better and better and better. And we have no idea when it's going to reach a certain point. There are people working in this area to try to make sure that PDOOM approaches zero and gets there. But the fact of the matter is, we're kind of on our own. We have to fundraise. This is absurd that the possibility of devastation from AI far outranks climate change, world hunger, droughts, even nuclear devastation by high magnitudes. And yet the world really doesn't know yet. And so every time I give a public lecture and I inform people about what's going on, the reactions are almost identical every time. They have two things that they say. Why are we just finding out about this now? And why isn't the government funding you guys? Like, why isn't more being done? Why do you guys have to scramble to raise funds to save the rest of us? Like, why isn't this our number one priority of all governments across the world? So I do predict in the book, once people know what is actually happening, that this race is going on, this kind of Manhattan Project, if you will, of AI, this race is going on. It might be a race to the bottom, right? So we have to think about this very carefully about how we want to move forward. So that's why I'm trying to inform as much of the public as I possibly can. They have a right to know that this is happening in their world. In terms of heading towards existential risk, I think we might see in 2025 the emergence of agency in an AI entity. That is to say, this thing's operating autonomously. Nobody has to tell it what to do. It's making its own decisions. It's self-improving. That will be the scariest to me, the next step, the one that we're really going to have to step up and keep our eye on. But AI integration, I am very hopeful for the youth of the world who are very smart, who will see sources to be able to use large language models and other forms of AI, and then to integrate those in very creative ways.
Duncan Eddy, Executive Director of Stanford's Center for AI Safety.
The future is long, and I think it's impossible in the future of humanity to rule out that as a possibility of something being possible. And so the question of how do we make sure that it doesn't go full Skynet on us and make your science fiction story become a reality, that I don't know of anyone that has any answers to that right now for how we do it. At the same time, I don't think we know how to make superintelligence either. That the current, as you mentioned, with large language models as a tool, they aren't reasoning right now for the techniques that we have. And I don't think anyone really has a full understanding, at least to my knowledge, of what makes intelligence, what makes consciousness. People have ideas, but no technology that we have today that I know of is going to have that aha moment for suddenly you have Sky. And so, but until we can understand what makes intelligence, how can we also reason about it, making it safe and make sure it doesn't make Terminator reality and the new Skull Mountain, the new hot real estate property. Language models right now are quite impressive. They can mimic conversation. They can mimic reasonable discussion. And that's where we get back to the discussion around the ethics of what you build and the responsibility there. To take a slightly different but extreme example, we could build a system today that looks at planes and automatically launches nuclear missiles. No one should build that system. That is a bad system to go off and build. And thankfully to date, we have people in the loop for all of those systems. And some of those individuals, they take those responsibilities incredibly, incredibly seriously. And so in the same way with building AI systems that can mimic intelligence, can act autonomously, that's where it becomes the responsibility of the designer that even if it isn't fully independent, fully intelligent on its own, these are input-output systems that can be connected to other systems to build complex behaviors. And that's where it's on the engineer and the designer to make sure that it doesn't go off the rails, which is why it is important to develop safety techniques to begin with, so you can make guarantees when building these types of systems that they don't. There have been a couple of interesting papers come out recently of demonstrating that the current LLMs do very poor about reasoning about circles overlapping or lines crossing. And so that's one area of active research is how do we measure? How do we quantify? What is the new Turing test? I don't know of a universally accepted standard for it, but there's always new research and coming up with new tests of how do we evaluate this. There was some recent findings of, believe research out of Google, but that could be wrong, of discovering new, more efficient ways of doing matrix multiplication that no person had ever thought of, and their AI-based system had come up with a new way of doing matrix math. AlphaFold out of DeepMind is incredibly interesting for figuring out new ways that proteins fold. That's a little less on generating new knowledge, but essentially reproducing a lot of human processes incredibly efficiently and at scale. So I think that's a really interesting concept of coming up with new tests. But as always with the scientific method, part of this new knowledge discovery is testing that discovery. So that's why you publish the paper and get slings and arrows thrown at it from your colleagues, and to prove that it is right. General relativity is still just a theory that could be proved wrong today, tomorrow, with a different test. All models of the universe, to a certain extent, are wrong. It's just a matter of when they are wrong. How useful is the model? So it would be really cool. I would be excited for the day where AI-based systems can help generate new discoveries that people would not have thought of. At the same time, you can't take new discoveries just at face value and say this is truth. Part of the scientific enterprise that any AI-based system, I believe, should be subjected to as well as that verification process to prove that it's true.
Alex Shvartsman, author and editor of the Digital Aesthete.
In the story, Adrian explores the idea that what interests a human being and what interests one of these programs may not be the same. We're already seeing some communication between different customer service systems and bots. I mean, you can have a program that's going to talk to a help support chatbot for you today, right? That exists. So we're already experiencing the very early stages of such communication. And I think that, the primary idea behind that story is that, it's perfectly possible for these machines to create something that other machines might consider to be high art, even though it will be completely incomprehensible to us. The trouble that we constantly get into with these conversations is that we are referring to large language models as AI. And I focused a lot on that in the introduction, in the essay that you cited at the beginning of the book, in that, this is not true AI. This is basically a really sophisticated, huge spreadsheet. So there's no actual intelligence. There's no decision-making that is happening. It is just all algorithm-based. Once we have an actual AI that's capable of thinking, that's capable of experiencing, then yes, you could absolutely have that, that intelligence write something, write a book, write a poem, write a story, or write a comedy routine that is worth listening to and that can actually be productive and helpful to humans and to any other intelligences. But we're not there yet. So as always, science fiction is looking a step or several steps ahead. And it's very important to differentiate between those two, because I think that ChatGPT and similar programs that exist today may not be able to do this. They certainly can't write a quality comedy routine. They can't even write a quality story. I mean, everything that they generate is so bland, because it's just, they're making the sausage out of all of this material that's regurgitated, and the outcome is not really something that you would want to read for pleasure. So once we get through that step where scientists figure out a way to create an actual intelligence, then yeah, absolutely, it can write comedy. It can be a true partner to humanity, or an enemy. So that's what we've seen in movies like Terminator, and but I think that I'm optimistic in that they're not necessarily going to be our enemy, because we don't compete for resources with them. We don't really, the interactions are much more likely to be anodyne than the science fiction writers of old had predicted.
Dan Siroker, founder and CEO of Rewind AI.
I think in AI in general, the lay of the land is there is probably AGI already out there, and it's no big deal. That's probably a pretty controversial statement. People have this idea that, oh, AGI will happen and everything will change, and superintelligence and the singularity, and but the reality is every day, tons of human beings are born. They all have GI, and nothing changes. Just because all of a sudden a computer can do what a baby can do when they're 5 or 6, it's not going to mean anything. So I think, yeah, certainly lots of jobs will now be much more efficiently done by machines, but that's just the history of technology. Probably lawyers won't exist in 10 years. And there's a bunch of things like that machines will just do better. But I think there's an overblown sense both on the dystopian and utopian views, dystopian thinking Terminator 2 and utopian thinking the end of work. So I think that's kind of generally my idea. I think Google is, having worked there for a few years, I think is very much approaching this as in some ways, this is kind of their wheelhouse. Google sucks at making products that require deep customer empathy and understanding a problem. They're pretty good at building products. And that former include classes like products like Google Wave and Google Glass, and all these products that are just technology in search of problems. They're really good at problems where they don't need to do much customer empathy, and it's just about how sophisticated, how good the technology is. So I'm optimistic they'll keep working on, if they can get out of their own way when it comes to fear of backlash and change and all that, they can probably build a technologically sophisticated and probably better solution than OpenAI and others. I do worry, OpenAI, Sam Altman, the co-founders were big investors in us early on. I'm a big fan, but it's a very commoditized space, moving very quickly towards zero. So large language models, I think, will very much be commoditized. GPT-4 is nice now, but Anthropic's pretty good. Google's gonna be pretty good. So I think that's kind of my view generally on that.
Patrice Simard, distinguished scientist at Irreverent Labs, debates Pedro Domingos, professor emeritus, University of Washington.
For me, I don't see human as a particular different machine than AI. It's some implementation. AI will be at the same level at some point. And so everything you say about objective function that applies to AI, we should also have a formulation to explain, how does it translate to driving humans and controlling the evolution of humans. So if we see it this way, then I have trouble interpreting what you're saying as, hey, we have control, we have the objective function. It's really simple today. It will be more complex tomorrow. To some extent, when we look at a human, I don't know what objective function they optimize at that point. It's been selected, and I think there will be a selection of AI algorithm that will maybe select the objective function at some point, and there will be an evolution, and at some point, I'm not sure we will be able to pinpoint exactly what they're optimizing. And I think that's okay.
Let me answer that question, right? This is a good question, and then I think there's a very concrete answer to it. But actually, first, AIs and humans are very different, and crucially in the following way, is that we are supposed to be in control, and for the time being, most of us will want to be in control. There are some science fiction scenarios where that doesn't happen, but there's this very practical question of we humans being made however we are, being similar or different from the AI, we want to stay in control of what the AIs do. How should we do that? Now, so there's that key difference, right? You could imagine it's like it could be humans and humans, right? So let me give you two answers to this. In a large company, You have people working
Yeah,
for
so
people.
let's be clear that humans are completely um, they are powerless in controlling other humans,
No,
right?
no.
Do you control your children?
No. But like, okay, so that was so. Let me give you two examples. Actually, let me start with a simpler one. If everybody in a large organization, everybody in society has this problem. It's called the agency problem, right? You manage me. What you do is, for example, you give me objectives, you give me metrics, and then you monitor how well I achieve them. And of course, this is subject to all sorts of malfunctions. But God help us if you didn't have those, right? So in a way, all I'm saying is the same way you use metrics. Like the CEO of a company is there to maximize, the value of the stock, right? And so the same way that humans control each other, they can control AI in that regard. Now you said like no, but like
Well,
let me just go one more.
the employees leave. There's all sort of mitigating factor that means you will not remain in control.
No, but yes,
So
but of course, but like there's two parts to this. One is like, what is the best we can do? And I'm saying, well, let's focus on these objective functions. But now here's something important to realize. Our objective function as humans evolutionarily is fitness. Is how many of us there are. And we are our genes, reproductive machines, as like as Richard Dawkins very well put it, right? And so you and I, we are controlled by our genes via our emotions. Our emotions are our objective functions, like maximize, pleasure, minimize, hunger, fear, etc., etc. So this, what I'm actually describing, is a similarity between how humans are controlled and how we should control AI, how we, as all animals, are controlled by our genes.
But okay, so that's perfect because the way I see it, right? So I love the fact that you mentioned Dawkins and or Darwin and the evolution of genes. But the way I see it is, if I look at our speed of evolution, if you look 100 or 300,000 years, the size of the brain was maybe 30% less than. I'm not an anthropologist, but I've took that information to figure out how long it took to increase our capacity or ability by 30%, and it's about 100,000 years. A computer does this in 1 year. If you approximate, and I may be off by one order of magnitude, but the number I start with is that AI and computers evolve at about 5 orders of magnitude faster for their capacity as humans. And if we see it as a species, and I define species very loosely as not, it has to be organic, but basically it has to be able to grow and be able to evolve. And AI satisfy both requirement as all the organic species. And now we have we have to face the fact that we have our species and we have another species that evolve at 5 orders of magnitude the speed. And I think it's a foregone conclusion where this is going to go. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as absolutely inevitable. And to think that we can control it, that we are the masters of it.
AI,
that seems...
but see, I mean, like, again, this is a point of debate, but AI is not another species. AI, to go back to Richard Dawkins, is our like technology is our extended phenotype, right? You know this notion of the extended phenotype, like the extended phenotype is parts of the world that your genes control that are not your body, like beaver stem or like like.
I think that's a very narrow definition.
No, but wait a second,
and I think it's crafted exactly to exclude AI, which is not
no.
The goal.
So like let's just say, like, I'm going to do that myself. I'm going to say technology and AI in particular are the extended phenotype of humans. We have the biggest extended phenotype of everybody. And the point is, you can have extremely complex technology that is controlled by something much simpler. In fact, we are way more complex and intelligent than our genes, and we're still controlled by them, right? And in fact, the fact that AI is moving so much faster, which is very true, is actually an argument for this. Objective functions are precisely how a slow-moving process controls a fast-moving one to its advantage. Like, our brains, right, can learn in a way that genes can't.
But you seem to imply that objective functions don't evolve as part of the evolution.
No, they do. They evolve, but they evolve slower. And there's another very important point here, which is the following: like, AI, right, is solving intractable problems, heuristically, or to be precise, NP-complete problems. The key characteristic of these problems is that checking the solution is exponentially easier than solving the problem. So the AI can be 10 to the 10 to the 10, faster than us. We can still control it because it's solving NP-complete problems for us. And our decision is what are the problems that we want them to solve, and that's exactly the choice of what the objective function should be.
One prevents them from choosing their own objective function and not even doing it consciously. Basically, there will be a selection, and at some point, there will be one that basically has its own objective function. And if it's successful,
I'll tell you exactly what it is. So the AI is free to choose its sub goals, because that's what AI is for, and that's what we humans do as well. It's like we can choose our sub goals in ways that our genes couldn't possibly have foreseen. But the reason, let me give you an analogy. Dogs are wolves that we evolved to serve us. And machine learning is the same thing. It's selective breeding. As soon as the AI is starting to not optimize my goal, it gets pruned. This happens, millions of times a second.
Oh, so I think I'm sure there are plenty of examples of things that we tried to evolve and that went and became pests and completely out of control. So I have little faith that we're gonna keep this. That because right now we are it's like being a parent. When your child is 5 years old, you feel like you're in total control. You control the objective function, you control the reward, you control absolutely everything. And then they turn 18, and then you realize that the control that you have is fairly limited. Your children can be smarter than you, they can know more than you, and I don't see why we believe that we're gonna. It's like young parents. Young parents thinks that their children will be very different, perfect, and everything, and it takes a while before they realize that they are not as much in control as they thought they would be. I think this is absolutely the lesson that we will learn in AI very quickly. Right now, AI is infant, and we are in control.
It's a bad analogy. Parents were never in control of their children, and the purpose of the children was never to serve their parents. The children serve their genes. They are controlled by their genes. The parents are just chaperones until the genes are ready to go out in the world.
Why is AI different?
Because AI is designed by us. We, again, like the children are controlled by genes, the AI is controlled by objective functions that we set for it.
But you don't have bugs in your code? I mean,
No,
yes,
of course you have bugs, but then the problem is the bugs, right? And again, like, of course there are pests and there are many things that happen.
The bugs for you may be a feature for the AI and a feature that's advantageous.
No, but
right?
I mean, look, I understand your analogy, right? It's a valid one. Like, lots of things have gone bad, but still we have dogs, right? Dogs are good for us. They serve us, right? Look, let me give you a good example.
Dogs.
Every livestock, every crop that we have is evolved by us to be much better than it was before. This is a massive success. Of course, there have been some failures, but they are insignificant compared to the success.
No, but I agree that we will have lots of success. What I disagree with is that you will remain in control. That I believe is
I think we will remain in control, and this is actually a key point, for as long as we want to, if we don't slip up.
But really, you don't control the AI that's happening in my basement. So you cannot control that AI. You cannot control what happens in other countries.
Very good point.
So there will be an AI that evolve that you do not control.
No, well, so so we are actually getting to a very important question, like who controls the AI, right? But like my AI, if I set its objective functions, I control it. You control your AI, and of course, the whole future of the next 100 years is going to be different organizations, countries, people, and the AIs they control, right? Me with my extended phenotype, and you with your extended phenotype, and America and China with their extended phenotypes. This is where, and sometimes things will go, sometimes things will go bad, but like our job is to try to minimize the chances of it going bad. The big things that go bad will be AI screwing up and not screwing up with AI. It will not be that the AI suddenly now decides that it wants to be in power, because we never put that in.
I agree with that. That's not what worries me. I think if AI evolved to have any kind of power and start being afraid, they will be afraid of other AI, not humans. So I actually don't fear, a conflict between AI and humans. That's not the way it's going to turn out.
So what is it you
And
fear there?
what I fear is that there's one way to prevent AI from evolving is if the human race was to disappear before AI is sufficiently evolved, then maybe we wouldn't have AI until the next species of intelligence can create a new kind of AI, right? So my fear is more that the humans will, the P of doom of human without AI is larger than P of doom with human. Sorry, P of doom with AI. So I think if AI can evolve to a certain, and I think it's going to happen within 50 years, at some point AI will evolve their own AI. And at this point, I'm not sure we can claim any control. There will be a survival, a selection, a growth selection where, and evolving for AI is more complex because we are used to have a lifetime and then we reproduce and basically we get supplemented by our genes being passed to the next generation. AI could potentially be immortal. It's the same program that runs indefinitely, but the evolution happens through software and software update and partial software update. So we would have to think about what evolution means for this new species, which you think we shouldn't call a species. But I see this as inevitable. And if you have an argument that says that it's not inevitable, I would love to hear it, because I've been thinking about this and I cannot come up with an argument that with a species which and I think my definition of species is inclusive enough and useful enough to include AI as a species. And with a species that evolve at 5 orders of magnitude faster than us, I think it's a foregone conclusion how it's going to head.
Well, I mean,
and
the argument is the argument that I've been making. But let me just, so first of all, I very much agree that P of doom without AI is greater than with, and that's precisely why all these attempts to stop AI are actually counterproductive. They're making the world riskier, not less. But I think,
I want to make sure that at the beginning of this thing, it looked like I was defending controlling the evolution of AI, which I'm absolutely not. Right? I don't want to regulate AI. I want to regulate maybe potential behavior that are now possible with AI that weren't possible before, and this is why they need intervention. I believe that AI will evolve. I think trying to stymie that evolution or that innovation in AI is absurd, and it's like putting a ball in a chain on your ankle, because everybody else will have an advantage if we try to prevent AI from evolving. So I think I'm totally anti-regulating how AI is researched or developed. And I believe that it's futile to try to do so. So not only it's bad for whoever is doing it, but I think it's futile in the final goal that you.
Well, there's one view which you seem to share, which is a minority view right now, but it's apparently Larry Page's view and the point of contention with Elon Musk that led to the founding of OpenAI, right? Is that AI will supersede us, and it's a good thing because human beings are not the end of evolution, and AI will be better than us, and maybe that'll come to pass, right? I think that point of view is probably more people will believe it as time goes forward. But here's the thing, right? I think we as humans should be extreme. Actually, let me share another fear, which is not a big one these days, which is that we humans will prematurely hand control to AI that we think it's great. I'm much more afraid of humans handing control to AI of their own accord than of AI seizing control, because humans are prone to handing control to other humans and therefore AI and to God and whatnot, because they think it's so smart when in fact it's still quite stupid. So I think before humans decide that yes, AI is going to carry the banner, I think it'll be thousands of years before that happens. And at least in my view, right, you should always leave a few billion humans around just to be sure, right? Even in that scenario.